The all-SEC football teams for the 2024 season have been announced. Georgia had 13 guys make the list. A couple guys on the first team, and then you got a little bit more on the second and the third teams. I think it's hard to do this. Is it just based off of stats? Is it based off of team success? Is it based off of other factors? There are definitely preconceived notions when you look at this. I think that they got some of it right. I think that some of it is just kind of like, I think that, you could consider having different guys out there. I thought that Carson Beck should have been considered. I'm not exactly sure I agree with the three quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers made this list, is kind of how I put it. So let me go ahead and just pull it up for you, show you guys who made it. We'll go through the list, and I'll talk about what I think about it and how some of it, to me, just doesn't make any sense. I keep checking the numbers. I keep checking the impact from some of these guys, and I don't get it. So let's go ahead right into it. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post bringing you the all-SEC football team. Let's go ahead and look at it. Here we go. All right, so I'm going down the list. You can see it here. You can see my screen. You got all my tabs. This is some of the easiest ways for me to show you guys stuff. So first team all-SEC, Jackson Dart at quarterback. Statistically, yes, it was Jackson Dart. You can look at these numbers. All right, he had the best. He had only 6 interceptions, right? Nico Iamaleava, kind of similar in that regard. He had the 25 touchdowns. One of the better completion percentages up here. It's actually the highest out of all these guys. And we had some big games. Some of his stats, like Carson's, like other guys, inflated by when they play those teams that are just not that great. But I'm okay with Jackson Dart. 9-3 season for Ole Miss. A couple big games. Obviously, the big win over Georgia. It wasn't a big Jackson Dart game, though. So it's not like Jackson Dart had this moment. I think that what you'll notice when we go through this list and go through the numbers is I am just not so sure. Is the talent worse? Are players just not producing? Something is going on, and we don't have these this guy. Okay, back to the list. Dylan Sampson, Jarquez Hunter, yes. This is probably the thing that is the most right about this entire thing. Those are the two best running backs in the SEC. Dylan Sampson, 22 touchdowns. Jarquez Hunter, one of the only other 1,000-yard rushers. He's very good. These are going to be running backs in the NFL, guys. Here is where you get a problem. Here is where you run into a little bit of a problem. Why? Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old, right? All that absolute stud. Luther Burden, absolute stud. Not necessarily the best numbers, right? Let's see. Receiving numbers are here. When you go here, you see Ryan Williams is in the top 6 for stats here for the SEC receivers, but it's not like this far and away thing. Eye test wise, yes, Ryan Williams is the best wide receiver in the SEC. Eye test wise, yes. To me, Luther Burden is the second best receiver in the SEC, but I don't know about this. So we're not seeing any dogs in this first team list. So you see my tabs. So you keep going. Tate Ratledge, all SEC team. He made it for the Georgia Bulldogs, right? This is a guy that was kind of in and out of the lineup. Does that make him worthy of being SEC first team? It's kind of my question to you guys in that regard. So you see the defense and the special teams. You're definitely getting big names on these. These are 4 big names right there. These are 4 guys that we're talking about NFL. So to me, some of this is just based off of name value when you look through there, right? Peyton Woodring, second team, all SEC. I'm getting a little mixed up here. I'm trying to make sure I got it for you. First team all SEC, they have Peyton Woodring as a kickoff return specialist, but I see him later on this list. So let's go to second team. Here's where I start to have some problems. Quinn Ewers was not the second best quarterback in the SEC this season. He's just not. In fact, he missed a couple games. I know that matters. His numbers are kind of meh, right? I think he threw 9 touchdowns compared to about 22 to 25 passing touchdowns compared to 9 interceptions, excuse me. And I don't know. I think that you can look at these quarterback statistics and you think about the impact and you think about what they had to deal with. I don't really see how it's not Carson Beck as number 2. It's not Garrett Nussmeier, I tell you that, because there were some games where LSU partially lived and died by Garrett Nussmeier. Yes, the case for Carson Beck, and he led a better squad to the SEC championship. I know that he got hurt and all that. But to me, there were just better options than Quinn Ewers on this list for SEC all second team. I thought that's where, okay, this is where you could maybe put Carson Beck, Gunnar Helm. You get another offensive lineman in Dylan Fairchild for Georgia. I think he's very deserving. This is a guy that just doesn't make mistakes. Jared Wilson, kind of same thing. Didn't play the whole season. But you get all-purpose guys like Barryon Brown on this list. To me, I love Barryon Brown for the NFL, but he did not have the statistics that warranted this. Here we're getting into some Georgia guys, second team. Jalen Walker, Michael Williams at Georgia, Malachi Starks, Georgia defensive back. So part of that is true, right? I mean, Jalen Walker, he had a couple insane games, and he had about 5-6 sacks. Michael Williams kind of didn't play up to what the expectation was for him heading into this football season, right? This is a guy that was somewhat expected to take this big step up. But you look around at the town in the SEC, and yeah, he's probably a second teamer. Peyton Woodring, as the place kicker, got onto the second team here, and I can pull it back up. Let's look at the third team. I think that the third team is pretty interesting. All right, I'm pulling it back up for you. Lenore Sellers, quarterback for South Carolina. I'm okay with this. He was a beast down the stretch. Here's where you kind of show how thin it was talent-wise this year. Why is Trevor Etienne on this list when he missed all this time? I know that this is a Georgia channel, and we're talking about it. He had 500 yards and about 8 or 9 touchdowns. That's just not a lot of production, and he missed games. Now, that's not his fault. Now, he balled out in the SEC Championship. He balled out against Texas. He had a couple other really good games, so he was solid. But this is a guy who wasn't around very much this season. Wisner, I thought, had a pretty solid season. I think he's deserving of a spot. But to me, that's a little bit of name value with Trevor Etienne, and you're seeing it in these lists. Chaz Chambliss, here we go. That's a guy who deserved to get on this list. I don't watch every single game of every single team, right? But if you watch every single Georgia game, you notice Chaz Chambliss making an impact. That is something that is extremely obvious. Here's a guy that was deserving. Dalen Everett. I mean, what he did in the 2 games against Texas alone, this is a guy that improved this season. And you see that typically with Georgia corners when they go from year 1 to year 2 as a starter. That's a guy that improved and definitely deserved to get on this list. Look at a former Georgia guy, Xavier Sorey, getting on there. But the thing that you notice the most when you just look through this list is, wow, I don't know that this team, that this conference is quite as talented as it was a couple of years ago. As you scroll through here and just kind of look at all the players that made it, Georgia, they got their guys on the list, but no receiver for Georgia deserved this, and they didn't, right? No tight end, kind of different. You get a few offensive linemen on there. You get a few defensive linemen on there. I don't really understand Carson Beck not really getting onto this thing and Quinn Ewers doing that. To me, some of that is just a little bit name value. Quinn Ewers is a very good quarterback. He did not play well enough to beat Georgia twice. Is that the thing holding him back? I guess. I'm not sure. But you look at this and you see Ryan Williams and Luther Burden on the All-SEC list, first team, and I think immediately right there you have to not take it seriously just because they didn't necessarily have the best seasons, I guess, with Ryan Williams. But Luther Burden had a worse season than he has in the past and didn't do as much as people expected out of him. So to me, that's kind of and this is a conference that just a couple years ago, had insane defensive talent, insane quarterback talent. Think about Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow all at the same time. And then you move on. You got Bryce Young, Stetson Bennett, a guy that's just winning all sorts of awards, along with other players. And this year, it just doesn't feel that way as much. It doesn't feel like there's as much talent in the conference. To me, it's noticeable when you look at this list and you see, hey, I just think that this is kind of a meh list, and they just threw certain guys on there. I don't know, but there's not like this guy that's got 15 sacks. There's not a quarterback throwing for 4,000 yards. The SEC was very tame in terms of what it did with stats. The SEC kind of ate itself alive a little bit. At this point in time, there are no SEC teams that haven't lost at least 2 games. That's a huge, huge difference with this conference. The talent has been distributed more evenly. The schedules have gotten more difficult. The conference obviously expanded. There are no more divisions that are making you play a certain team and not play other teams. So things have changed, and I think you're kind of seeing it in stuff like this and seeing it definitely was more evenly distributed. But there are certain guys on here that there's definitely some name value to it. I think they did a good job with the running backs on the first and second team. I think that they definitely hit the big names on this list. It doesn't reflect the stats. Not everything is stats, but I don't know if this list truly reflects the story of the SEC this year. In a way, though, it's just kind of all jumbled up. So maybe I'm wrong there. But I just think that, I don't know. I guess I'm coming on here to defend Carson Beck, but I think he needed to be on this list. Thanks for watching.